Welcome back. Diego Lopes makes his UFC debut on very short notice, taking on Movsar Evloev, who is a very tough matchup for a top 10 UFC fighter with a full training camp. So, this is a very ballsy, risky move for Diego Lopes. I don't know how big the risk is because everybody expects him to lose, I guess. But as far as a straight up fight, yeah, this is a tall order. But I'm glad he's at least being rewarded with a main card pay-per-view slot, which I think is where this fight is. Fourth fight from the top. Anyway, Movsar should win this fight. I guess I'd predict he wins this fight, but of course I'm betting on the underdog at plus 550. I'm waiting to see more odds. There's not even over or under for this fight, let alone prop bets. But in general, I do think Movsar wins, and if I did was forced to give a prediction, I'd go decision, maybe late stoppage. Movsar is 16-0, 3 TKO victories, 4 submissions, and 9 decisions. And in the UFC, he's 6-0. His last 6 fights, obviously, and all 6 of those fights are by decision. So he's trending towards being a decision fighter, but much like I said last week with Caio Borralho, every now and then a fight comes along where the finish just seems more likely. And not that I'd say there are gaping technical holes to be exploited from Diego Lopes, but just the fact that Movsar Evloev is a mauler, a wrestling machine, and the way he looked against Dan Ige was just his best performance easily, and that was his last performance. That, combined with the fact that Diego's taking this fight on short notice and octagon jitters and whatever other horse shit, I think finish is more likely, much more likely in this fight than not. But let's get into Diego Lopes. Why I like Diego Lopes as a fighter. He's 20-5, 28 years old, 7 TKO victories, 11 submissions, 2 decisions. The 5 losses come 2 by knockout or TKO and 3 by decision. The TKOs were a while ago. I haven't seen them. I really try to look for them. First thing I do whenever I see a new fighter is start looking up his losses. And I always look for the video. I was able to see video of his decision losses. Of course, he fought Joe Anderson Brito on the Contender Series 2 years ago or so. And he lost a technical decision because he was poked in the eye in the 3rd round. Fight was stopped because he couldn't fucking see. And that was an awesome fight. And it was awesome because of him. I did think Brito was winning, but I really respected his performance. I think, what the hell's his name? Lopes went for like every different submission possible, at least once. And he just really impressed me with his effort. He has lost 1 fight since then. Actually, I think his next fight was a loss for the Fury FC Championship against Nate Richardson. Very capable fighter. You've probably heard me mention him here before. But he's a guy who, again, he's a very capable fighter, and he beat him in a 5-round fight. It was a 5-round championship fight. I did think Diego got the better of him. I think he racked up enough points early on with control, and even down the stretch, I thought he was in that fight. But in general, I think the reason he lost is because his striking wasn't as sharp in rounds 4 and 5. And neither was his wrestling, to be frank, which is why they were striking. But his striking was still there for him overall in that fight. He had Nate Richardson hurt on the ropes, on the fence, almost out, I thought, a few times. And he showed he can bang, he can be forced to fight on the feet where he didn't really want to be in that fight. Deep in the championship rounds, and he's not going anywhere. And in other fights since then, even though they're against lesser competition, he's put some guys away with strikes. He's got a great counter right hand. I've seen him knock down, I think, 3 different guys with it, and he finished 2 of them, even though 1 by submission, 1 by knockout or TKO. And really, I like his combinations and a nice, beautiful left hook that always, maybe not always, but it's on the end of his combinations. And it's a beautiful punch, and I expect it to be there for him throughout his career. But this guy is a submission artist, first and foremost, I want to say. Especially in that Joe Anderson Brito fight, he really showed it. But he's also shown it taking out some good UFC veterans in the last few years. He beat Ronnie Jason by decision, but he tapped Marco Beltran with a knee bar, and he tapped Masio Fullen with an arm bar. Those guys, maybe they came and went, but they were in the UFC, and they're solid victories. And I think there's definitely a lot to like from this guy. I think, he's got good cardio despite falling off a little bit in rounds 4 and 5. He had a championship fight, I think, in the Lux organization, 5 rounds. That won 5 rounds, and he was the last man standing, so to speak. Get hitting takedowns in rounds 4 and 5. And yeah, there's a lot to like about him, just not the matchup. Movsar Evloev is a tough matchup again for an excellent fighter in his prime in the top 10. Diego Lopes still has some climbing to do, so it doesn't make sense for him to win this fight. Movsar, he hasn't looked vulnerable on the ground, and Diego will test him there. And on the feet, even though I think Diego could, work some nice striking against Movsar, because Movsar is first and foremost a wrestler, Movsar will have, I think, a distinct athletic advantage. He'll have the speed advantage, which is pretty much what I want to say there. So I'm picking Movsar to win this fight. I think there will be a lot of wrestling. If the prop opens up, if the prop bets open and round 3 is juicy, or round 2, especially if the TKO props are juicy, I will play Movsar. But I'm taking Diego Lopes. I'm picking Diego Lopes to lose, but I'm betting on him to win at plus 550. I just think there's a little bit of value there. Movsar Evloev, he's not a crusher. He's not going to get anybody out of there early. It'll leave more room for Lopes to work some shit, and he's got some shit to be worked. I do think he's going to stick around in the UFC if he loses this fight, and he'll tap out some guys and hang around for some time. So that's how I see the fight. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.